Hello everyone, Scott Schoen here. Today I'm going to be telling you a little bit about some of my thoughts on practicing. And so I think the first thing is that, the saying practice makes perfect. And I think a lot of people, believe that saying, and it's important for your kids to practice. But on the other side of things too, it's important for people to practice something for the right reason. When you're practicing something, because you're being told you absolutely have to practice it, it's not going to be as effective as when someone wants to do something so bad that they start practicing on their own. So there's sort of a double-edged sword there. So the more we can entice or encourage our kids to practice, whether it be piano or swimming or karate lessons, the better that's going to be. And the more we say, you have to go practice for a half an hour, the more that can create some resistance and can make kids say they don't want to practice. So having a checklist, encouraging them, praising them when they do practice, all those things can work. And I'm not saying one strategy or the other is better, but just to realize the more that they're practicing because they love it and because they want to, the better they're going to get. So that's something to think about. The other thing that I think about that I really learned from martial arts is that when you practice something, practice doesn't really make perfection. It's practicing to the point where you get something just right. And one of the things I always tell kids, and I believe myself, is that none of us reach perfection. On the same end of things, we can do something as well as we know how. So let's say that maybe, I'm spelling a word and I spell the word absolutely correctly 3 times in a row. Well, then I performed it to the best of my ability. For all I know, the letters are in the correct order and I've spelled it just right. So in that way, I've achieved like a small picture of perfection, but nobody can spell every word in the dictionary. And so no one can perfect the ability of spelling, or no one can perfect their martial arts, or no one can perfect what they're doing at school. So instead of telling the child, you need to be perfect, it's that we are shooting for a perfect rep, a repetition, and by that I mean not one that's absolutely perfect, but one that, for all we know, every single distinction that we know about it, like, the letters being in the correct order, those are all correct. But when you can ask a child and say, now, do you know that the A comes before the E? And they say yes, and then you look at the word and the A is after the E, then that's not a perfect rep yet. They knew that what they were doing was incorrect, and yet they still did it that way. And that usually comes from, quickly practicing, just trying to get through it, or not enough repetitions until you get to the point where you do it as correctly as you can do it to your knowledge. Then that provides an opportunity for learning, because at this point, in their mind's eye, it appears perfect. You can't see anything wrong with it. And then, a teacher can come and they can say to the student, well, this is doing it this way will improve, your spelling, or will improve your martial arts, or will improve your swimming or your discipline. And then they have a new way of seeing it, and then they can make corrections on that. And that's how we continually get better. Even think of like the Olympics. Some of the Olympic routines that have gotten perfect 10s or have been scored as perfect, when we look back on them, they look easier, than the routines that are done today. But there were no mistakes that they could see. And then maybe someone could show them something, and they would say, oh, there was a slight error there. I can see that now, but when I did it, I didn't see any errors. So in martial arts, we're striving for a perfect rep in practice. And I like to do, if I'm really pushing myself, one perfect rep is awesome. But if I'm really pushing myself, I'll do 3 perfect reps in a row, and then I feel I'm ready to really perform that. I feel like, I've nailed this. And that could take a long time. So when we're practicing to get better, but we're also practicing to get a perfect rep in, and then many perfect reps are going to result in perfect performance. And then at that point, you're open to new learning, because even though it seems perfect to you, there's always something that you can improve and take to the next level. And that's where your instructors and my instructors come in, is saying, okay, let's take this to the next level, and let's see what's the next level of correction that you don't even know you could do. Then all those repetitions, you've got to go back through and add in and find that new correction or new distinction, put it in, correct it, and then go from there. And that's sort of the process of learning and becoming better. But I think it's very rewarding and very exciting for someone to experience the feeling of getting something just right. And knowing that feeling then allows you to hold yourself to a high standard, whether you're studying for a test, or you're cleaning your room, or you're looking at a relationship or a friendship, or anything like that. You can look at it and say, it's not quite there yet at that high level of a perfect rep. And then once it gets there, you go, I got that. Now I'm going to shoot for that again. I'm going to shoot for that again, until I get more and more of that, and less of just sort of going through things, knowing I'm making mistakes, knowing I'm not really carefully looking at it, and blowing through it. And so that's been an experience that's benefited me my whole life. On the flip side of the coin, watch out for kids who are too hard on themselves. Remember, every rep up until you get a perfect repetition is going to be a mistake. And then a lot of times I'll get one perfect rep in, but then I don't get the second and third one. So I might be spending hours and hours just to get one kata or one form or one technique just right, and to get a perfect repetition. So it's not something that you can be like, after every time you miss it, going, I totally made a mistake and I'm no good at this. You have to be to the point where every mistake is like nothing. You just go, I missed that part, let's do it again, let's do it again, let's do it again. You never even think of the mistake once it's over. Just bang, 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 looking at it, seeing what you missed, and then on to the next thing. If you make a big deal out of mistakes, then they'll never get a perfect rep in, or they'll only do what they already can do perfectly, and they'll never expand. So you don't want to put on that pressure like you have to get a perfect rep, but to instill the idea that everybody makes lots of mistakes. That's normal. That's 99.9% of the time you're going to be doing things and making mistakes. And then 1 out of 1,000 times you get a perfect rep, and that's your reward for making all those mistakes. But if you're afraid to make the mistakes, you will never get perfection. So it can sort of help when people are perfectionists and hold themselves to that high standard, if you let them know you're not doing it perfectly now. It's impossible to do it perfectly. So you either have to completely give up and do nothing, or you take the attitude that everybody makes mistakes all the time, and that if you work hard at it, occasionally you'll get a perfect rep. That's the goal. The more of those you get, the more perfect performances you'll get. And there's a real sense of pride in doing that, doing something just right, and getting that feeling of doing it perfectly, even though there's always another level to grow. So these ideas sometimes are in opposition to each other, and I hope that this post will give you something to think about as a parent or as an adult, to really internalize the idea of what is practice about, what is perfection, does it even really exist, or is there always another level? And yet at the same time, there are certain moments where you say, that was just right, this is it, everything's perfectly aligned in this moment in my life. And so just think about that. And I think for me, it's something I think about all the time because I practice a lot. So go from there, and remember to encourage your kids to practice instead of more encouraging is going to be better. The more you demand practice, it can work, and it does work with a lot of people, but it's not always going to be as motivational as enticing them to practice.